Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. What can I get for you?
Hey, can I have a wholesome story about a nurse who saves... Wait, cancel that. Make it an evil nurse who destroys people.
Pull up to the second window and we'll see you next crime.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. I am John. By myself today. Jamie has experienced a loss in his family. If you haven't listened in on the other episodes this week, you'll know Jamie hasn't been with me all week. Prayers and thoughts go out to Jamie and his family. He will be back. Rest assured, he will be back. Jamie hasn't missed an episode in almost 8 years. I think I probably said over 8 years, but I think we're just right at 8 years. Never missed a single episode, and he asked for a week off, and I was like, yeah, dude, you take the time that you need to heal and grieve. So Jamie will be back with us hopefully next week. And again, if you know Jamie or if you want to just shoot him a message on our truecrimecast@gmail.com, you can find him on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter on all of our True Crime Cast stuff. You can drop him a note. I'm sure he would really appreciate it. But I have a true crime story and hopefully 10 minutes or less that I want to share with you today. So I'm going to get the ball rolling. Today we have a story about a nurse, and nurses are supposed to be kind, like loving people who help people, but they wouldn't make it on this show. No. Today we're going to be talking about Bobbie Sue Terrell. She was a native of Woodlawn, Illinois. She was one of 8 children. 4 of her siblings were brothers, and they had muscular dystrophy, and 2 of those boys actually died before she turned 35. Bobbie Sue was described as shy, overweight, but academically she was very capable, and she actually stood out from her classmates, and she had a really strong religious zeal. And this was something that would either amuse or embarrass her classmates. Despite these challenges, she found confidence in her church, and that's really where she shined, was at church. She played the organ, she sang well, and this was like her comfort zone. After high school, in 1973, Bobbie Sue became a registered nurse. She became a nurse, and she was likely inspired by her brother's health issues. She would then marry a guy named Danny Dudley, but struggled with infertility in her marriage, and this led for the couple to actually find adoption, which is amazing, right? Well, the marriage deteriorated, and when her son was hospitalized due to a drug overdose, Danny accused his wife of giving the child tranquilizers that was actually meant to treat schizophrenia, and this led to her divorce, of course, but also to her loss of custody of that child. After the divorce, Bobbie Sue's health declined pretty quickly. She faced repeated hospitalizations for a range of different issues: fibroid tumors, ulcers, a broken arm, pneumonia, among other issues. She actually committed herself voluntarily to a state mental hospital for a psychiatric treatment stay, where she was there for over a year. Once she was released, she took several short-lived nursing jobs and eventually landed at the Hillview Manor in Greenville, Illinois. And that's where her behavior became so increasingly erratic. Sometimes she would faint, and twice she inflicted injuries not only to herself, but also to other people. But she inflicted injuries on herself that required emergency surgery. This is not an accident. She inflicted these injuries on herself and required surgery. She confessed to a counselor that her actions stemmed from frustration over her infertility. She was discharged from Hillview Manor due to her erratic behavior. And here is where things get even more interesting. July 1984, Bobbie Sue has relocated to St. Petersburg, Florida, obtaining her Florida nursing license and beginning to work in the Tampa Bay area. Despite her ongoing health issues, including a severe case of rectal bleeding, which led to a colostomy, she was hired as a night shift supervisor at the North Horizon Health Center in October of 1984. Just a month into her role there, Bobbie Sue's late night shift saw a rapid increase in patient deaths. The first death that we are aware of was a 97-year-old woman named Aggie Marsh, who passed away on November 13th, 1984. And then a few days later, Anna Larson, age 94, almost died from an insulin overdose, which was strange because she was not a diabetic, and there's no other reason why anybody that doesn't have diabetes should be given insulin by injection. So Bobbie Sue had the only key to the cabinet which housed the insulin. So things go from bad to worse. On November 23rd, another patient, 85-year-old Lethe McKnight, died from, guess what, an insulin overdose during Bobbie Sue's shift. That same night, there was an unexplained fire that broke out in the hospital linen closet. After the fire, the next couple of days, there were some more patients that died, including Mary Cartwright, 79 years old, and Stella Bradham, 85. And this was on the night of November 25th. Now, the next day, which would later be called the Holocaust by staff who worked in the hospital, saw the deaths of more than 5 patients. An anonymous call reported that 5 patients had been murdered, and this prompted the police to investigate. Bobbie Sue claimed that she was stabbed by a prowler on November 27th, which raised further suspicions. Detectives were alarmed by the 12 patient deaths in 13 days, and she was dismissed from her job in December for, quote, the good of the facility, end quote. After her dismissal, she actually filed a $22,000 workers' compensation claim, which she said she was owed because of the stab wound that happened there in November. But the hospital did not settle that with her. They actually countersued her, and they brought in psychiatric evidence labeling her as a borderline schizophrenic with Munchausen syndrome. Reports of her self-harm incidents at Hillview Manor were also presented in court, and her claim was denied. In February 1985, the Florida Department of Professional Regulation suspended her nursing license, deeming her a serious public risk. Later on in 1984, while she was actually awaiting that hearing, Bobbie Sue married someone named Ron Terrell, who was a local plumber there in Tampa. But her mental instability just increased, and that actually led to an involuntary psychiatric commitment. And meanwhile, the Board of Nursing issued a 5-year suspension of her license with reinstatement contingent on psychiatric improvement. So basically, if you can't get your stuff together, you're not going to be able to be a nurse anymore. But it doesn't end there. On March 17th, 1985, Bobbie Sue was actually charged with attempting to murder Anna Larson in November of 1984. Detectives found her and Ron living in a roadside tent, but collected enough evidence from their former home to indict her on 4 additional murders. She was held without bond, facing charges for the deaths of Aggie Marsh, Lethe McKnight, and Stella Brandham, and Mary Cartwright. So her trial was set for October 1985. Delays happened, of course, due to the psychiatric evaluations, and actually pushed it all the way to February of 1988. And ultimately, Bobbie Sue pled guilty, and she did so in order to reduce her charges to second-degree murder. And she received a combined sentence of 65 years in prison. Guys, this is terrible. I mean, I've had loved ones in nursing homes. I'm sure many of you have too. And we place our loved ones there because we know we're not capable of caring for them on our own. We need the professional support of nurses, doctors, and all those involved in the care of our loved ones at nursing homes. And how awful and tragic is it that now, back in the 80s, you had this woman who potentially killed up to like 14 or 15 people. And yeah, most of her victims did not get justice. I don't know that there were ever charges if she did, in fact, start that fire. We don't know. That's kind of everyone's suspicion. But yeah, this is a tragic case. And it's one that I think many of us deal with if we've put a loved one in a nursing home. You wonder when you're not there, are they being treated kindly with loving care and warmth? And hopefully the answer to that is yes, they are. But you never know when an evil woman like Bobbie Sue Terrell may show up. If you feel like your loved one is not being treated fairly, don't sit back and wait on something tragic to happen. Report your suspicions to staff. Report it to the supervisors in charge. Be the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. Because, you don't want any of this kind of stuff to be happening to your loved ones. Guys, that's going to do it for today's case. Went a little over 10 minutes, but I hope you don't mind. Again, Jamie, our thoughts and prayers are with him. If you wouldn't care, shoot him a message. Just let him know that you miss him. You're thinking about him. He will be back. There's no conspiracy here. We love Jamie. He'll be back. It's just a hard time in his life. So, guys, we appreciate you. Leave us a rating and a review. That would go a long way. Again, we love you. And until next time, would you like crime with that?
You've listened to True Crimecast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.